Finance Committee to order at 6:37. So my committee, myself, Councilor Tavares, and we have one item of business tonight from the docket of June 18th, 2024. I entertain a motion to appropriate $500,000 from account 1000-359000 general fund undesignated fund balance to fund 3507 library reconstruction to be used for the library project involving approximately 25,000 square feet of carpet replacement across the 4 floors and all the associated work involved.
Second.
Motion is in order. And so this was an item that was held from committee last week so that we could answer a few questions that people had, and to facilitate that discussion, I've invited the budget director and the library director to join us. So if you guys could come forward as well. And the couple questions that I sent to Mason and Amy to answer were, I asked if you could bring the breakdown of the estimate, talk about the differences between the 220K estimate and the new estimate, and then outline the design process and the flooring options that are on the table, including carpet tiles that I heard from you, Councilor Lavoie. Explain why carpeting is important in the library and why noise or sound deadening is important, and then to reiterate that mold hasn't in fact been detected yet. So I think there was some confusion there. Sure. So we can talk about those things, and then anything else you guys have to add, and then we can answer some questions.
Do you want to talk about
Sure.
that? I'll talk about the budget.
Thank you. So I saw some of your questions ahead of time, and yes, we are absolutely looking at carpet tile versus what we have now, which I'm told is the standard 12-foot. We're told that the estimate will be slightly less than what we had previously going with carpet tile. We do need carpet in the stacks. The way our building is set up, it is very echoey and the acoustics are odd, so we don't want to cover it all with carpet, but we certainly need it in certain areas of the building. When Mason and Bill McDonough and I walked through the building, we had a lot of the same questions, and that's when we were realizing, like, we don't know the answers to this. We need somebody who knows buildings better, and we didn't want to talk to a carpet installer who said, whatever you want. Like, we wanted recommendations from their expertise. It is certainly not our expertise. So carpet tiles, and the other question was, yes, mold has not been found in. We are nervous that it is potentially there. We had temporary roof for 3 years. We know that there are areas on the 3rd floor that were wet, that we had fans blowing on, so we are we're a little anxious, a little nervous, but we haven't seen anything. We're on the lookout, and we don't know what we'll see when things get pulled up. Am I missing questions?
I can kind of go into some of the details. Perfect.
The finance
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple things to kind of just address higher level. Our capital improvements plan, it's a planning tool. It's not strictly a capital budget, and it's come up multiple times, at least since I've been here, where an item in the CIP might not fully comprehend all the costs involved in a project. I think this is a good example where the estimate for carpeting was a really good estimate. It comes out, the amount that's in there is about $220,000, which is about $9 a square foot for the amount of square footage in there. We're expecting between $8 to $11 a square foot, and that's sittering carpet tiles. But what's not included in that number is any sort of moving costs, design, project oversight, stakeholder communication between, our city union, our staff, figuring out, coordinating how to best manage our services and not cut as many hours and, things like that, as well as hazardous materials testing, which is a big piece of this. So while I think the number in the CIP is a really good estimate for carpet, or reasonable estimate, there's a lot of other pieces to a project of this scale that aren't necessarily included in that number. So one of the things I think going forward, we're trying to find a better way to make sure that, everything's considered, whether it, be as simple as something like the cost for prevailing wage, or also if there's got to be design work, engineering work. You'll see it in various items where, a department lists a cost that they have based on a quote, but they also then say, this project needs to be engineered, needs to be designed. There's other costs, that aren't included in this number. So trying to figure out how we can, make sure that those are fully captured, instead of just kind of carrying the same number and maybe adding a little bit of an inflation factor every year. So that's a challenge, I think, for all the departments. Speaking to the project itself, just to clear up one thing, I think I don't know if when Councilor Voy, when we spoke over the phone about the project, I don't know if I was as clear as I should have been that, carpet tile is the preference for this project. That was one of the first things the mayor asked months ago when we talked about this. Bill McDonough recommended that. Our purchasing staff, Amy, and even some of our maintenance staff said, hey, this is an easier process. If we have issues, we can quickly swap out a tile. So that's definitely the preference. And that's actually what the cost estimate is based off of. But it doesn't mitigate the need to potentially have to bring in a moving company. So if we go in there, we do hazardous materials testing, which, just to clarify, there's nothing that's been found. But if we go in there, this carpet's over 30 years old, asbestos was still being used in adhesives at the time. There could be other hazardous materials or mold mitigation, things we have to look at. If we, pull up the carpet, do those test cuts, find that stuff, we're still going to have to lift up the stacks, move the furniture out, and we're going to have to mitigate the whole area. So we won't just be able to carpet tile around the furniture. So the hope is that we wouldn't have to get to that point, and we would consider all options to potentially, come in, just replace the areas where we need to. But the reality is we don't know what we're going to find. So, this builds in the assumed cost for really, hopefully, the worst case scenario, because I think it would be unfair for us to have to come back halfway through a project and say, hey, we need another $500,000. And then, the council's sitting there like, well, we approved this project for $250,000, and now we're halfway through. How are we going to say no to complete the project? So we're trying to consider all the costs on the table. And, the big thing here is bringing in, a construction consultant to really scope out the project, give us all those options, someone who's done these big move phase replacement projects at libraries, who have already been in conversations with, to really kind of manage the project, weigh all the options, work with the design team, and really give us the best bang for our buck and make sure that we're getting what we need, not what, a company might come in and say, hey, do this, and that's not the way we want to approach it. And then there would also be multiple bidding processes, related to, the construction, the materials, a potential moving company. So.
Thank you, and thank you both for coming out. Appreciate the work you both do. Definitely feel a bit better post conversation now, or post, hearing your testimony, I guess you could call it. But yeah, I was always worried that we were just rushing to make sure we were doing a moving company out of the gate. I think if that was in the initial communication, this might have already moved out last week. So I feel better knowing that we're not dead set on $240,000 for a moving company. Obviously, bids would go out and things like that, but $500,000 sounds a lot better to the taxpayers than $750,000. But I think this is a good testament to what good government's about: checks and balances, to ensure that we're asking the right questions and that you guys can come out and help us get to the right decision. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is this includes cost for mold mitigation and mitigation for all of those sort of things. And if that isn't found, the overall costs will likely come in less.
Yeah.
Quite a bit lower. Hopefully.
Absolutely. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? So there's contingency built in, not just, like I said, with the carpet, we're expecting between $8 and $11 per square foot. That 275 would be the $11 per square foot. So there's hopefully some contingency built in there. That would be a bid out project. So hopefully we get competitive bids on something like that. And then there is an additional, 20% construction contingency, as well as some contingency in the soft costs, so that we can do that testing. Of course, if there's a bigger problem than just, what's within the restrictions of, a carpeting project, that's a different question, right? And that, I think that would go outside the scope of this project, and we'd be having a different conversation. But in terms of the scope of, going to the library, replacing the over 30-year-old carpet, we believe that this gets us there. If it's something completely, out of the ordinary, it would potentially be back, but we think this gets us there. And based on, initial conversations with a construction consultant, we thought these were really reasonable estimates. Actually, the estimate for the moving company, ironically, this is exactly what our consultant told us. And then we went and actually Amy had somebody come out to the library, do the whole walkthrough, scope out the full move of everything, stacks, furniture, categorizing all the books and everything. And I think it came in at $234,000. So it's right on the number that we had actually anticipated, and that the consultant told us this is usually what it costs for these library moves on this scale. So we feel pretty good about the numbers, but again, these are preliminary cost estimates. When we bring in a consultant, they'll really fully scope the project, clarify the budget, and work on the initial scope and get the design phase bid out. So
I think.
Sorry, Councilor Tavares and Councilor Foley.
So just a quick question. On the moving company line item, so where it talks about pack out, storage, put bags. I don't know if this is premature to ask, but based on guidance that's been received, so as far as the storage piece, is there going to be storage on site to be able to move those things, or is that moving furniture off-site? Do you know?
So I think in the quote we received, there was actually a local storage facility where they essentially move items off-site, and usually in phases, because there's sort of construction ongoing, and you're trying to mitigate the impact to operations as best as possible. So based on my understanding of the quote, there was definitely off-site storage. So again, it's trying to limit the impact. So
Good. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming down, and Amy as well. That's super helpful to have this clarity, and also for the public as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilor Foley, then Councilor LaVoy.
I do appreciate your coming down, but I'm confused. We are asked to move to appropriate $500,000. You just handed out a piece of paper that talks about $750,000. Most of that is the soft costs and contingencies. Where is that money coming from?
yeah, great question. So the other communication item that came down last week was for the authorization for ARPA funds, for use of ARPA funds.
Right.
One of the items on that list was the library carpet project. And so this project, we're looking at, a full-scale start to finish, from getting a consultant on site to actually like wrapping up this project, is probably about 12 months. That doesn't mean the actual, carpet replacement is 12 months, but in terms of the multiple bids and, various company contractors that would be on site, within the next 6 months, we believe a couple of these contracts in here, if we need a moving company, we believe we'll be able to do that with ARPA. Based on the timeline, there's certain contracts built into this budget, this cost estimate, that we think we'll be able to do with the ARPA funds. But it's sort of a timing game where, if basically whatever we can do with the ARPA funds, we will do. And then these funds are, these are coming from free cash and would sort of be, the second piece of funding. And our goal would be to eat up the ARPA funds first, and then, because any dollar that we don't use of the free cash can be used towards other capital projects.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor LaVoy.
Thank you. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Are you able to give any kind of best case scenario number for the taxpayers on the record? Not in terms of holding you to it. I think the problem that I found was it was in the paper right away with this dramatic figure that most people saw and probably almost fell over. So, like, when I run the numbers here, I know there's some contingencies, but I figure $395 to mid $400,000.
Yeah, I think if there's no moving company involved, there's no mitigation, then I think, yeah, that's probably closer to where you're at. Also, the design cost would be lower if we're not doing if we don't have to do sort of hazardous materials mitigation. So I think that's reasonable. I think that's really best case scenario. Again, the carpet's over 30 years old, and at the time, asbestos was still used in the adhesives. It's not to say that that's in there, and it's definitely not, an immediate risk, right? And when, carpet and floor adhesives that have asbestos, it's not like an immediate risk, but you have to then take mitigation steps. So I think it's a reasonable number. I just wouldn't want to,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
no,
want
I
to set an unreasonable expectation, but that would be the goal.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mason or Amy? Are there any other comments in general regarding this item? If not, we'll have a vote. And thank you both for staying late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And I move to adjourn at 6:52.
Second.
Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 6:52. Thank you.
'54, please join me for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Second?
Thank you. Motion is in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are now operating under suspended rules. The reason for that is there is an emergency measure to come down, and we are going to ask Mason, because he just hasn't had enough time in front of us over the last several months, to be here to answer questions regarding that. That being said, I would, Madam Clerk, actually, before we do that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from May 7th, May 14th, May 21st, May 29th of 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please go into a reading of the first public hearing and only public hearing?
Certainly. June 18th, 2024. Public hearing regarding an amendment to Section 1-8.1 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, which contains outdated pricing and information. The proposed amendment is as follows. Delete in its entirety 1-8.1, List of Persons Book. The List of Persons Book prepared by the Board of Election Commissioners shall be furnished free of charge, as provided by law, to all political committees and to all political candidates of the various districts in which the city is located. There will be a $20 charge for all other printed copies and a $10 charge for all other copies supplied on a computer disk. Replace with 1-8.1 List of Persons Books. The List of Persons Book prepared by the Board of Election Commissioners shall be furnished free of charge, as provided by law to all political committees and to all political candidates of the various districts in which the city is located. There shall be a $30 charge for all other printed copies and a $4 charge for all other copies supplied on a thumb drive.
Thank you. Do we have anyone to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against? Anyone to speak neither for nor against? Seeing none, Councilor Tavares, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
No, I do not.
Okay, I declare that public hearing closed. Thank you. I would now entertain a motion to enter into committee of the whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do we have anyone here who would wish to address the city council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to arise from committee of the whole.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We will now go into a reading of the mayor.
Hold on.
We will now go into.
You went way too fast. I was trying to talk. Whoa. You're moving way too fast here, Council President Delizio.
Mr. Kerr, we'll give you 4 minutes to speak. That 4 minutes starts
I'm
now.
actually representing a group, sir.
Mr. Kerr, you have 4 minutes to speak, and that starts now.
You guys seem to have a massive misunderstanding of the law, our constitutional rights, and your own authority, council members. A few weeks ago, the talking points I was hearing were disgusting and sickening in nature. I have no idea if you guys paid attention in school when your teachers taught you about the Revolutionary War, or if you guys just don't even care to use Google and move your thumbs before you speak at these meetings representing the government and acting on behalf of the great people of Attleboro. So tonight we are going back to 1782 and we'll be covering a wide range of state law, federal law, God-given inalienable rights, and you, the government, in your role and legal scope. By the way, I have an audit of the past 200 meetings. I know the rules as well. You fine people are public servants. You need to let that sink in. You are here to serve me and the public. This is your job. You ran for it. You got elected for it. No one forced you to take this job nor this paycheck. With great power comes great responsibility, and clearly by the way that you guys are acting and the way that you guys adjusted committee of the whole for the first time in the history of the city, solely because you guys don't like my criticism, is madness. If you guys don't like my right to redress my grievances with you, then I suggest you go back to the private sector, and then you can tell me to F off. And I could do nothing. But here, alas, as public servants, you all must listen to me. Unless you are Vice President Dolan, then you will sit there on your phone the entire time and be lazy. Now, before I get into all the law and history, I would love to speak quickly upon Councilwoman Holmes, as she engaged in collusion with many of the other councilors to put a stop to committee of the whole while they looked into how they could manage it, simply to silence me in my criticism for their illegal and unconstitutional practices until they can vote to implement even more unconstitutional rules and policies into play, costing the taxpayers money. Going back to a few meetings ago, they had a whole section in the beginning, due to executive section, talking about me. What you guys don't understand is when you interrupted me, Council President Delizio, when you did that 5 times, because my case was approved by the federal court in Massachusetts, you engaged in intimidation of a federal witness, you fucking idiot. And that is illegal, sir. You cannot do that. See, if I sit here and I call you names, that's called redressing my rights. That's called my right to redress my grievances with government officials. You don't have that right to bully me and intimidate me when I'm filing a lawsuit against you. You have a massive misunderstanding of the law, of our God-given inalienable rights, and your authority, as well as purely discrimination against disabled individuals. You have a pattern of abusing the disabled, and I will not let you start now to bully the blind and the deaf. This is the United States of America. Massachusetts has the oldest constitution in existence where these individuals' rights are protected, and it's 2024. You all have smartphones and you should be ashamed of yourselves for your blatant discrimination. Alone, you might think you can bully me, but together, we are a lot stronger. I want to bring your attention to the Massachusetts Constitution, Article 19. The people have a right in order and peaceable manner to assemble to consult upon the common good, give instructions to the representatives, and to request of the legislative body by the way of their addresses, petitions, or remonstrations, a redress of the wrongs done to them and of the grievances they suffer. One of the best arguments ever. Those who won our independence, this was a writing by an Associate Justice, Louis Brandeis, in 1927. Those who won our independence believed that the final end of the state was to make men free to develop their faculties, and that in the governments, the deliberative forces should prevail over the arbitrary. They valued liberty both as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. They believed that freedom to think as you will and to speak as you think are means indispensable to the discovery and spread of political truth. That without free speech in the assembly, discussion would be futile. That with them, discussion affords ordinary adequate protection against the dissemination of noxious doctrine.
Mr. Kerr, we're at the 4-minute mark. If you're able to wrap up your responses, please. We're at the 4-minute mark. If you're able to wrap up your presentation, please.
Yes, I will be done, but I am speaking on behalf of a group which you allowed to speak extra time, but I will be done in approximately 30 seconds. The public discussion is a political duty, and that should be a fundamental principle of the American government. Men feared witches and burnt women. It is the function of speech to free men from the bondage of irrational fears. Those who won our independence by revolution were not cowards. They did not fear political change. They did not exalt order at the cost of liberty. True, courageous, self-reliant men with confidence in the power of free and fearless reasoning applied the process of popular government. And no danger flowing from speech can be deemed clear and present unless the indecence of the evil...
Mr. Kerr, we're approaching 5 minutes. I've shown some leeway.
Before the opportunity for full discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Is there anyone else who would wish to address the council? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to arise from committee of the whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We have now risen from committee of the whole. We will now go into a reading of the mayor's communication. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. June
You're welcome.
18th, 2024. Dear municipal councilors, I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Public Works, Michael Tyler, regarding the need for funds to pay heating invoices for the remainder of fiscal year 24 and to pay for unanticipated traffic light control work. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $8,000 from the Public Works salary and wages account to the following: $4,000 to the Public Works heating account, $4,000 to the Public Works traffic light maintenance account. Supporting documents provided in order to be able to process this request for the end of fiscal year 2024 deadline. I hereby request your honorable body to consider this prior to June 30th, 2024.
Public Works, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Veterans Agent Ben Quell regarding the need for funds to replace the ramp on the Veterans wheelchair van. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $635 from the citywide reserve fund for transfer account to the Veterans Maintenance of Vehicles account. Supporting documents provided in order to be able to process this request for the end of fiscal year 2024 deadline. I hereby request your honorable body to consider this prior to June 30th, 2024.
Personal Veterans Human Services, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Veterans Services, Ben Quell, regarding the donation of a $300 Stop and Shop gift cards from the Gilbert Perry Post number 115, Veterans of Foreign Affairs, in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro. I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro. Supporting documents provided.
Personal Veterans Human Services, please.
I respectfully submit for consideration the appointment of Jeffrey Bailey, 5 Sheridan Circle, to the Board of Election Commissioners. As per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 51, Section 16A, the Board of Elections Commissioners must consist of 4 persons, of whom 2 shall always represent each one of the 2 leading political parties. Supporting documents provided.
Personal Veterans Human Services, please.
As you will recall, a few months ago, the council approved the use of $50,000 Mass EVIP grant and associated municipal match for the purchase and installation of a dual-port electric vehicle charging station. This charging station will be for the public use and will occupy 2 adjacent parking spots in the city-owned parking lot between City Hall and the Shang Building. Installation has since commenced, and the unit is anticipated to be operative sometime in July. Because the EV charging station will be located in a public parking lot and will be available for use with payment, certain amendments to the revised ordinances are necessary. After consultation with the Planning Department, Accounting Department, and the Director of Budget and Administration, and having been approved as to form by Solicitor Peter Mello, I respectfully submit the following proposed amendments for your consideration: that Chapter 10 of the revised ordinances for the City of Attleboro be amended by adding the following new section: Section 10-15, Public Electric Vehicle Charging Stations and Rates.
Ordinances, elections, legislative matters. Councilor Tavares, would you like to call for a public hearing on August 20th?
Yes, I would.
Second.
Thank you. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Planning and Development Gary Arasian recommending that the city accept a land donation of approximately 5.9 acres of open space to the city to be placed under the stewardship of the Conservation Commission. The offer to donate the open space and the enclosed document fulfills the Conservation Commission's Order of Conditions number 097-1184 dated July 13, 2011, as well as condition number 14 contained in the Planning Board Certificate of Vote dated June 23, 2011, specifically that pursuant to the provisions of Section 17-10.5 Open Space Residential Development, Meridian Development LLC shall formally offer parcel B containing 259,193 plus minus square feet of open space, as shown on sheet 5 of 16 to the Municipal Council as a donation to the Conservation Commission prior to the final release of funds from the performance guarantee or loss from covenant, whichever applies by the Planning Board. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body accept parcel B containing 259,193 plus minus square feet of real estate for open space purposes in perpetuity and place under the stewardship of the Conservation Commission, supporting documents provided.
Zoning and land use, please.
I regret to inform you that we have received a letter of resignation from Community Development Block Grant Director Dorothy Brissett. During her tenure with the city, Dorothy assisted numerous low and moderate residents' income and local nonprofit organizations to obtain grant funds that supplied safe and affordable housing, stimulated economic development and financial self-sufficiency, and supported important various community programs and services. Please join me in thanking Dorothy for her service to the city.
Dorothy, thank you for your service. Wish you all the best. That's an FYI.
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Recreation, Christy Clausen, regarding the need for funds to pay an earned time out payment due to pending retirement. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $6,431.25 from the citywide reserve fund for transfer account to the Recreation Earned Time account, supporting documents provided. In order to be able to process this request for the end of fiscal year 2024 deadline, I hereby request your honorable body to consider this prior to June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Personnel, Veterans, Human Services, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Water Courtney Allen requesting the mayor to be authorized to sign grant applications or filings with Mass DEP. The first grant application through Mass DEP will be for cybersecurity improvements. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body authorize the following: that Mayor Kathleen D. Simone is hereby authorized on behalf of the applicant to file applications and execute agreements for grant and/or loan assistance, as well as furnishing such information, data, and documents pertaining to the applicant for a grant and/or loan, as may be required, and otherwise to act as the authorized representative of the applicant in connection with this application. That the purpose of said loan grants, if awarded, shall be funded to approve activities. That if said award is made, the applicant agrees to pay those costs, which constitute the required applicant's share of the project costs, supporting documents provided.
Public Works, please.
For your information, I regret to inform you, your honorable body, we have received the resignation of John Davis from the Planning Board. Please join me in thanking Mr. Davis for his service to the city.
That's an FYI, and we all thank Mr. Davis for his service.
I regret to inform you that we have received a letter of resignation from Senior Land Use Planner Stephanie Davies. During her tenure with the city, Stephanie was integrally involved with guiding the city's growth and expansion and ensuring that current and future residents have a clean, green, and vibrant community to live, work, and play. Stephanie was also a key force in assisting Attleboro to become a state-designated green community, which has helped the city secure thousands of dollars in grant funds. Please join me in thanking Stephanie for her services to the city.
It's an FYI, and we thank Mrs. Davies for her service as well.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Public Works, Michael Tyler, regarding the need for funds to repair the catch basin cleaning truck. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $13,750.51 from the Public Works salary and wages account to the Public Works Professional Services account, supporting documents provided in order to be able to process this request for the end of fiscal year 2024 deadline. I hereby request your honorable body to consider this prior to June 30th, 2024.
Public Works Committee, please.
For your information, I regret to inform you Your Honorable Body, we have received the resignation of Beth Gould from the Board of Library Trustees. Please join me in thanking Ms. Gould for her service to the city.
That's an FYI, and I think we all thank Ms. Gould for her service.
I respectfully request your Honorable Body to transfer $20,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the Mayor's City Solicitor account. The City Solicitor's June invoice has not been received. Therefore, in an abundance of caution, additional funds are being requested for the remainder of fiscal year '24. In order to be able to process this request for the end of fiscal year 2024 deadline, I hereby request your Honorable Body to consider this prior to June 30th, 2024.
Finance Committee, please.
On June 17, 2024, the city received an unanticipated invoice from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services related to repayment of funds received in 2020 related to the CARES Act. In 2020, the city received a CARES Act relief payment in the amount of $53,428.78 as the city is a Medicare fee for service provided. The invoice we received yesterday is for the full amount received in April of 2020. While we are actively reviewing the invoice and the city's responsibility to make payment, the deadline for payment is July 6, 2024. To ensure we can make this payment, if necessary, it is imperative that we have funds available for the full amount. Therefore, I hereby request your Honorable Body transfer $53,428.78 from Citywide Reserved Fund for Transfer account to Citywide Transfer to Grant account, and further transfer $53,428.78 to the HHS CARES Transfer from General Fund account. Supporting documents provided in accordance with Article 2, Section 2-9B of the City Charter of the City of Attleboro. I respectfully request your Honorable Body to consider this as an emergency measure.
That'll go to the Finance Committee, please.
I would like to update you on the recent conclusion of the Joint Public Safety Building Feasibility Study, which began in 2022. The idea of a joint public safety complex has long been the subject of discussion, and in a growing city, it is inevitable that we will need to scale up on our public safety facilities as we welcome and serve more new residents and businesses. Moreover, as you know from your recent capital improvements tour, several of our existing public safety facilities are much in need of repair improvements, and we must determine whether, when, and to what degree it makes financial sense to invest in these improvements versus building new facilities. After months of work and study, including response times, analysis, and an input from Chief Hegney, Chief LaChance, our consultant Casel Booz Associates, KBA, recently made a final presentation to the Municipal Building Commission concerning the facility, property, and related needs of our police and fire departments. Although we await the final report, the study concluded that there are two viable sites for a proposed 107,500 square foot joint public safety complex, 100 Union Street / 95 Pine Street, and the Ponson U.S. Army Reserve Center at 50 John Williams Street. Because of its size and location, the Ponson Army Reserve Center emerged as the prime location for the facility. Projected costs for building a new public safety complex at this location are estimated at $132 million to $142 million. By way of comparison, last fall, the City of Melrose approved a $130 million debt exclusion for a new 96,000 square foot public safety building. Appreciating that this cost estimate is somewhat surprising, the KBA consultants pointed out the fact that in our post-pandemic world, public construction costs have skyrocketed to uncharted territory, and it's extremely unlikely that they will return to pre-pandemic numbers. In fact, the consultants advise that public construction costs will continue to rise. For these reasons and more, it is important to note that there must be significant consideration, conversation, and coordination before any decisions are made in regard to planning and funding a project of this magnitude. There may be room for adjustments in the scale, scope, and size of the facility that could bring costs down. And while I have made a request to the U.S. Army to acquire ownership of the Ponson Reserve Center property, that is also a matter that will take additional time and attention. Lastly, in order to fully evaluate the value of this project, options for appropriate improvements to our existing police and fire buildings need to be carefully compared to the projected costs of construction for a totally new facility. Just as the construction of our new high school required extensive community outreach, education, and commitment pursuing a joint public safety complex would require much of the same effort. Ultimately, what we must do now is work together to determine the best course of action for the future of the city and for current and future residents. Sincerely, Kathleen D. Simone, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There is no clerk's communication, so we'll jump right into committee reports, beginning as always with Mr. Cobus.
All right, and we'll start with the emergency measure. So from the docket of July 16th, 2024, report for Finance Committee. From the docket of July 16th, 2024, I entertain a motion to consider the following as an emergency measure: to transfer $53,428.78 from account 1124100-578300 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1124100-599600 Citywide Transfer to Grant, and further transfer $53,428.78 to account 24194996000 HHS Cares Transfer from General Fund.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
All right, and so the reason we want to consider this as an emergency measure is that this is a request that came in yesterday to pay back money that we received, CARES money that we received in 2020. And the deadline to pay this is July 6th. And so in order to meet that deadline and not have to pay any penalties on it, we want to approve this now and get this paid. Now, Mason and Deb are still investigating exactly if we actually need to pay this in the details of that. But in order to avoid paying penalties, the prudent thing in the is to approve this now and move forward. And that's why we want to consider it an emergency measure. Does that make sense? Why it's considered an emergency measure and what it's for? It's CARES Act funds that we received in 2020 that we just received in the accounting at the federal government side came back yesterday saying, hey, we overpaid you by $53,000 and $53,428, and you now have to pay us that back by July 6th.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Lavoy.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, the city was still working to vet this and ensure that this is accurate, so there's still the potential that these funds may not go out, but I just wanted to put that out there and confirm that that's still current.
Council Sawyer.
The CARES Act, was that something that came to us because of the pandemic? Is that what that was for? Sorry, I just want to clarify what that money was for.
That is what the CARES Act funds are, yes. COVID Act, I forget what it stands for, but it's, yes, those are,
Rescue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those were COVID funds, and these were Medicare fees tied to, I believe, ambulance, the Medicaid. These were very much tied to COVID.
Council Holmes.
Thank you. I know we're still trying to gather some information on this, but they're giving us 19 days to pay this. Do you know if this is the first time that they've asked for funds back?
This is the first time I'm aware of it.
Okay.
So just one thing to keep in mind, and all great questions, a lot of times when we get an emergency measure like this, and I think the most important thing is this was just received yesterday, vetted through Deb and Mason yesterday, Potts today. I think we found out probably right around noon that this was coming down. I think what Councilor Lavoy said and Mr. Cobus alluded to it as well, there is a possibility that these funds never leave, but we have to be prepared and in a position where if we have to, they're ready to go out, because if we don't, we're gonna incur penalties, and I'm willing to bet that they're not gonna be small penalties. So that's where we're at. So this right now is just not to vote on the motion, but to vote on taking the motion as an emergency. So if this passes, then we'll go on to the motion. If not, it won't be voted as until the next full council meeting. Additional questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote on the emergency preamble, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Boa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Right, now for the main motion. From the docket of July 19th, 2022, I move to approve the following emergency measure: to transfer $53,428.78 from account 112410000-5783000 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 112410000-599600 Citywide Transfer to Grant, and further transfer $53,428.78 to account 24194996000 HHS Cares Transfer from General Fund.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
And this is that motion.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to authorize the city to expend $1,524,631.97 in ARPA funds for the following.
You may waive the reading as you read them in committee.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
And this is the catch-all for the 1.5 million in ARPA funds.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to approve the expenditure of such funds as specified within the parameters of the grant, and also approve any further grant amendments regarding the anticipated receipt of $76,560 Department of Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant to be used to purchase an electric vehicle and a hybrid vehicle for Parks and Forestry, and additionally to transfer $25,000 from account Park and Forestry Salary and Wages to account Park and Forestry Transfer to Grant, and further transfer $25,000 from account Park and Forestry Transfer to Grant to fund EECBG Transfer from General Fund to cover the additional monies needed to complete the purchase of the vehicle charger and electric installation.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
We talked about this last week.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
I still have a question about whether any city vehicle can use this charger. Any hybrid vehicle, whole electric vehicle. I don't see any reason why it
I'm
couldn't.
not sure, but we had already called for a vote. But we can, if you don't mind, Todd, just looking into it, and we can send it out via Virginia.
Thank you.
Have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares? Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to approve the payment in lieu of taxes payment in lieu of tax agreement between No Fossil Fuel LLC and the City of Attleboro. The City Council authorized the mayor and the assessors board by vote number 23 on December 5th, 2023, to enter negotiations with the company for a solar photovoltaic facility plan for development at 179 Peckham Street.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
Discussed it last week.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have roll call vote, beginning with Counselor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to appropriate $500,000 from account General Fund, Fund Balance Undesignated to Fund 8509, Special Purpose Capital Stabilization Fund.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
It's the $500K to the stabilization fund.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Counselor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 nays, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to appropriate $500,000 from General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance to fund library reconstruction to be used for the library project involving approximately 25,000 square feet of carpet replacement across the 4 floors and all the associated work involved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
Discussed it earlier.
Okay. Mr. Lavoy.
Thank you, President Delacio. I just wanted to thank Councilor Cobus for bringing down Amy and Mason tonight. And I also just wanted to state that I don't think any counselor is ever not in favor of the new carpets at the library. I just think it was pertinent that we vetted the amount and the process. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That concludes the business for the Finance Committee. I call for the committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Counselor Foa.
There is no business of the IT and Infrastructure Committee this evening.
Thank you. Counselor Lavoy.
Thank you. Reporting for the Licensing Committee from the docket of April 16, 2024. I move to approve the new Class 2 license application from Route 1 Automotive, Inc., 883 Washington Street with 10 customer parking spaces and 55 display spaces.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
Briefly, I know that this was held up a bit dating back to the public hearing on May 7th. I did touch on it last week, but happy to clarify again. We just wanted to vet the applicant. They do have a business here in Attleboro already, successfully with 0 issues. But there was concern from abutters, so we just wanted to clarify that. Everything checks out, and we're happy to have him have his second business here.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That is all the business for the Licensing Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Counselor Reynolds.
Thank you. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of June 18th, 2024. I move to declare the following police department vehicle as surplus and available for disposition for a trade-in or to sell. It's a 2014 Ford PI utility, and it's in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
I have none.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, there'll be a roll call vote, beginning with Counselor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That is all the business City Property and Claims Committee has this evening, but I would like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. Reporting for Public Works Committee from the docket of June 18, 2024. I move to transfer $174 from account Water Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to account Water Enterprise Fund Insurance.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No, we discussed in committee.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have roll call vote, beginning with Counselor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion passes.
From the docket of June 18, 2024, I move to appropriate $39,238.82 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings to account Wastewater Enterprise Fund water meter supplies. After such time, the accounting department will work with the wastewater department to transfer the funds to the Water Enterprise Fund for the residential meter replacement program.
Second.
Thank you, motion is in order. Any comments?
Just a quick one. We're almost there. We're almost done with it. I know that we've been listening to this for a while, so we have like 6% left of the city for the water replacements, meters.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have roll call vote, beginning with Counsel Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes,
10 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you, motion passes.
And that's all the business for Public Works Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. And Counsel Holmes.
Thank you. Reporting for Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee from the docket of June 4th, 2024. I move to authorize the city to expend $62,500 of ARPA funds on costs associated with the fire department communication system repairs and upgrades.
Second.
Thank you, motion is in order. Any comments?
No, we discussed in committee.
Okay. Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Counsel Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion passes.
That's all the business this evening. I'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. We'll recognize Counsel Tavares to pinch hit for Mr. Angelo.
Thank you, President Delicio. Reporting for Personnel, Veterans, and Human Services from the docket of June 18, 2024, I move to approve the appointment of Kiana Channer, 93B Orange Street, to fill an unexpired term on the Cultural Council, term to expire February 2026.
Second.
Thank you, motion is in order. Any comments?
We discussed this in committee last week and heard from Ms. Channer, and was happy to hear about her history of community involvement in Dorchester, and over the last several years, it sounds like she's definitely gained a passion for bringing that to Attleboro, her new home after several years. So excited to have her on the Cultural Council.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
From the docket of June 18, 2024, I move to transfer $16,385.43 from account 1124100-578-300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1630100-515075 recreation earned time payment.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No comments.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Counsel Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 4, 2024, I move to approve the expenditure of such funds and any future grant amendments regarding the receipt of Community Development Block Grant for $15,702 to be used by the Council on Aging to fund the Outreach Shine Council.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No comments.
Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 4th, 2024, I move to approve the following transfers. $132,750 from account 112-41000-578360, citywide reserve for compensation 53rd week, to account 112-41000-599550, citywide transfer to compensated absence, and further transfer $132,750 to Fund 2517, Reserve for Compensated Absence, $45,801.86 from account 112-41000-578350, citywide reserve fund labor negotiations, to account 112-41000-599550, citywide transfer to compensated absence, and further transfer $45,801.86 to Fund 2517, Reserve for Compensated Absence.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
I have no comments.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Kobus.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds? Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 4, 2024, I move to place the title Zoo Curator to a grade 7 in the exempt classification plan and amending the classification plan established in section 13-3.1 of city ordinances.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
I will say with this one, we did hear from the zoo director and also Lynn in regards to this piece of business. So it was good to get some of the rationale behind some of these changes, and hoping that this will improve some of and fill some of the needs at the zoo, and hopefully help grow. I think some of the areas where we can improve there.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the chairman to chair and adding the words "and vice chair" after the word chair. The amended section 2-8.1 will read as follows. There is hereby
You
established.
may waive the reading. It was read into committee last week.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
I have no comments.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Kobus.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That concludes the business for Personnel, Veterans, and Human Services. We call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
If you'd like, Councilor, we're operating under suspended rules. If you'd like to call for your own committee and the special committee.
Yes, ordinances, elections, and legislative matters has no business for this evening. We call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time. And the special committee on tax abatement review has no business for this evening as well. And we call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Sawyer.
Thank you, President Delicio. Reporting for Zoning and Land Use Committee. And from the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to approve the following instruments to fulfill conditions of approval for the subdivision plan entitled Brigham Hill Estates Phase 1 and Brigham Hill Estates Phase 2, specifically Condition 32 contained in the Brigham Hill Estates Phase 1 Certificate of Vote, which requires WB Construction and Development, Inc. to convey to the city certain easements related to water and drainage infrastructure, and condition number 33 contained in the Brigham Hill Estates Phase 2 Certificate of Vote, which requires WB Construction and Development, Inc. to convey to the city certain easements related to water and drainage infrastructure.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
I didn't have, we talked about this in committee about that these easements are needed for this development.
Additional questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of June 18th, 2024, I move to appropriate $500,000 from 1000-359000 General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance to fund 3580 illicit connection discharge mitigation. As part of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System and PDES compliance, the city conducts illicit discharge detection testing in phases throughout the city.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
This was for the illicit connection, basically, so that things are not going into the water that they're not supposed to be there.
Okay. Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll have roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That is all the business for the Zoning and Land Use Committee, and I wish to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Waterman.
Yes, thank you. The Transportation and Traffic Committee has no business this evening. We will be having some, I hope, very soon. So we'll meet at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Fowler.
The Special Committee on Rules and Procedures has no business this evening. I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. I'll call for a meeting on the Special Committee on
Taxes.
Compensation and Classification at the next appropriate time. There is no old business, there is no new business. Before we adjourn, just a quick overview of next Tuesday night. It will be the last meeting of the, through the summer. We'll meet again the third Tuesday and Thursday in July. Tuesday, Vice President Dolan will be running the meeting. We will be voting out of committee, anything you want to vote out of committee, but we will come together as a full council and vote anything that needs to be voted by June 30th to ensure that we're tying up the end of the year. That being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:42.